Hello everyone, I am Ritesh from DCVT Pune, and in this video I'll be explaining bit manipulation. So let's get started. So how are numbers stored in the computer? So they are stored in the form of bytes and bits. Bit is the smallest unit of memory in the computer. So it can either be on or it can be off. On means 1 and off means 0. So when we take 8 bits we get a computer byte, and bytes, and typically when we are like looking at memory, like we say 8 GB RAM, so the 8 GB would be gigabytes. So whenever we are like mentioning data transfer rates, or we can say memory sizes, we typically mention it in the form of bytes, and so byte is more common, but you have to understand that a byte consists of 8 bits. And for example, in like C++, an integer is mentioned as 4 bytes, but that 4 bytes is actually 32 bits, because a byte is 8 bits. And similarly, each variable is stored according to its data type size. So for example, a float would be 4 bytes, double would be 8 byte. And let's say you have an object like a custom object you have made, it will also have some size depending upon its members, functions, etc. So now let's look at the number system which we use normally throughout our day-to-day life. That's the decimal number system. In that, like we have given places, like places to the number. So for example, this is the ones place, this is the tens place, and this is the hundreds place. And with each of these places we have given it a power of 10. So like the first, like we can see the ones place has a 10 raised to 0 power associated with it. Then 6 has 10 raised to 1, and the hundreds place has 10 raised to 2. So we can say that these are the powers of 10 related with these positions, and at each position we can have a multiplier to that power. So by that I mean, at the ones place we have 10 raised to 0, and we are multiplying 5 in this case with that power. Similarly, in the tens place we have 6 as a multiplier, and in the hundreds place we have 3. So when we like want to find the value, we'll use the multiplier, and then we use the power. So 3 into 10 raised to 2, that's 300. Then this will be 60, and this will be 5. So using that we get the actual value, which is 365 in the decimal number system. And the reason why like we commonly use the base 10 or the decimal number system is, one reason is that we have 10 fingers, so for us it's easy to count up to 10. After that we have to use, we can say the tens place, because I can count, like for example you can count from 1 to 10 using your fingers, but after that you will have to add another digit. So that's where the tens place comes in. So this is the reason we are using decimal number system. But for the computer it's more easy to use two states, on and off. As I mentioned, 1 and 0, because 1 can be represented as like the flow of current, and 0 can be represented as the, we can say, the stoppage of current. So for computers it's easy to use two states rather than 10. So now let's look at the binary number system. So consider this number, this is in binary, and you have to understand in binary there are only two states, so you can only have 0 or 1. You can't have 4, 5 like written in these places. So now let's see the powers of 2 associated with each place. So this is the, you can say the first place has 2 raised to 0, then 2 raised to 1, 2 raised to 2, and 2 raised to 3. That's a 3 there. And with each, we can say, place we have a multiplier. So here we have 1, here we have 0, 0 and 1, same to the decimal number system. And when we want to find the value, what we do is we only take the multiplier where we have 1. So we have 1 here, and we multiply it with 2 raised to 3. We get 8, and then we see this is 0, this is 0, and then we see this is 1. So we do 8 plus 1, which comes out to be 9. And that's like the binary representation of 9. And you can see the diagram here, it has the decimal number and its binary counterpart. So 9 as 1001, and then 10 is 1010. So it's 8 plus 2, and here 0 comes, so we have 8 plus 2 becomes 10. So this is how the binary number system works. So now let's see bit manipulation. So what is bit manipulation? It is accessing or changing the variables on the bit level. Why would you want to access the variables on a bit level? The reason is that the bitwise operators are quite quicker and faster than the arithmetic operators. For example, adding, dividing, they are quick. They are not slow in any way, but they are comparatively very slow as compared to bitwise operators, because the bitwise operators access directly the bits, and we are in a way directly accessing the memory. So it's quite quicker to use bitwise operators, and they can be used to replace inefficient algorithms. We'll see two, like we can say, applications of bit manipulation further. So now let's look at the bitwise operators. So first one is bitwise AND. So it's like the normal AND we use. AND means that both the conditions should be satisfied for the output to be 1. So 1 and 1 will only result in 1, other values would be 0. And here we have a special case that let's say we want to turn a 1 into a 0, then we will actually do it with AND 0. So if we have a 1 and we do an AND with 0, the value will be 0. So we can use that to clear a bit or make a bit 0. Next we have bitwise OR. OR is like I want A or I want B. So you can have one, like let's say 0 or 1 will be 1, or 1 or 0 will be 1. And if both of them are 1, then that's also fine. The output will be 1. The only case where it will be 0 is when both the, we can say, operands are 0. And here we can use OR to set the bit. Like here we were clearing the bit using AND. We can set a bit or make a bit 1 using OR. So we can do 0 or 1 is equal to 1. So that's the application of OR. Now let's look at a bitwise NOT. So bitwise NOT is simply a toggle bit. Let's say there is a bit I want to turn, let's say it's 0, I want to turn it to a 1. But if it's a 1, I want to reverse it. So for that I will use the, we can say, the bitwise NOT. And then we have the XOR. So XOR is a, it has a quite unique property in which, like, let's if the two operands are the same, the output will be 0. But if they are different, so for example 0 XOR 1 or 1 XOR 0, the output will be 1. So this property is quite unique and it's quite hard to remember it. But just keep in mind that if the operands are different, the output would be 1 for XOR. So these, so the last two bitwise operators are the left shift and right shift. So left shift shifts the bits to the left by 1. So here we have 0 1 0. When we left shift, so this is the operator for left shift by 1. This one will be this one will be shifted to the left by 1. So the value will become 1 0 0. And as required, we can add zeros from the, we can say, from the right hand side. So the value now becomes 1 0 0. And similarly, if I do 1 left shift 1, then the, I can add a 0 here, so that, so it becomes 1 0. So if you see this, this value was 1. When we left shifted it, the value became 2 in binary. This is not 10 in decimal, this is 2 in binary. So the value increased by 2. So left shifting, it multiplies the original value by 2, because we are shifting the powers of 2 to the left in a way. So this is left shifting. And then we have right shifting, which is the opposite of it, in which we shift everything to the right. So for example, let's say, let's take this one. So 1 0 0. So this is 4, not 100, this is 4. And when we right shift it, it becomes 0 1 0. This is 2 in binary. So here we are dividing by 2, because we are shifting the powers of 2, we can say, to the right. And because of that, everything is being divided by 2. So when we, let's say, do 8 right shift 1, the answer would be 4. So that's left shift, right shift. So now let's see uh, some applications and questions regarding bit manipulation. The first one is to find the powers of 2. So if you want to find whether a number is a power of 2, you can use bitwise operator AND. So let's see the first, like, how 4 is represented in binary. So 4 is represented as 1 0 0. Quite simple, no issue. Like, and after that, let's consider that we want to find whether 4 is a power of 2. We know that that it is a power of 2, but let's say we give any number. For this example, I'll consider 4. Then what I'll do, I'll subtract 1 from that number. So I'll, 4 minus 1 would be 3. So then I'll represent 3 in binary. So 3 in binary is 0 1 1. Okay, now I'll do an AND. So if you look at the truth table for AND will give 1 when only both the operands are 1. So in this case, the first bit 0 and 0 is 0, 0 and 0 and 1 1, 1 and 0 is 0. So in this case, everything results in 0, and the output is, we can say, 0 for the AND. So this is true for any power of, this is true for any power of true 2. So we can say that 2 raised to n and 2 raised to n minus 1 is always 0. So this is the first property. And if you want to see that programmatically, so here is our here is the program. Here we have a function called is power of 2. This is the traditional approach where we use a while loop, and we keep dividing it by 2. Dividing by 2 is quite a we can say a computationally heavy operation, so we want to avoid it, and we will use bitwise operator AND for it. So let's say if we run this, so for I'll show you the output first, and then we'll see the how we can convert it into a bitwise and. So here is the output. So 64 is the power of 2, which is true, and 31 is the power of 2, which is false. So this approach here is actually the time complexity is O of n. So if I put a very huge number, the time taken by this will also be, like we can say, it will take more time as compared to a O of 1 solution. So using we can say the bitwise and, the solution gets reduced to this. So it is num and num minus 1 is equal to 0. So it's same to the condition we saw in the ppt, and this is an O of 1 solution. So even if you give it, let's say, a huge number, it will take the same time as if you give it 2, 4, 8, 16. So that's the power of bit manipulation. Like you can eliminate the, we can say, the issue of time complexity by using bit manipulation. So here is the code, same output, but now it will take less time. Even for higher inputs, we can say like 10 raised to 6, 2 raised to 16, it will give the answer. Like 2 raised to 16, we know that it is a power of 2, but when we represent it, it's a very huge number. So now let's look at the next application, which is finding uniques in a duplicate. So by that I mean, let's say we have an array where there are duplicates. So let's say 1 is repeated 2 times, 2 is repeated 2 times, but there is one number which is unique. So we want to find that unique number. So for that we could use a while loop or a for loop and iterate over everything and then find it. But we can also use the XOR property. This is, consider this example as a, we can say, exercise for the XOR property rather than a practical application, because I want to explain the advantage of using XOR. So when we do an XOR between the same numbers, the answer is 0, because as I mentioned, XOR gives value 1 when there are, we can say, different inputs. So so when we do the XOR between 5 and 5, the inputs will be same at every bit. So 1 XOR 1 will be 0, then same for this and same for this. So we can say that for n, this is XOR, not raised to. So for n XOR n, the value will always be 0. So that's the first thing. And when we have duplicates, when I do 1 XOR 1, 2 XOR 2, everything will be 0. And then the next property would be, when I do an XOR between 0 and any number, I will get the number back. So let's say I do 0 XOR 3. So as you can see, 0 and 1, these are different. So I'll get 1. When I do 0 and 1 again, I'll get 1. And here we have the same number, but again, like 0 is being carried over because our original value was 0. So I get 3 back. So when I do XOR with any 0 with any number, I get the number back. So these are two properties which we'll be using. So let's look at the code again. So here we have an array. Let's int arr. It has one is there twice. One is present twice. Two is also present twice, and then we have 5. But 3 is unique. So we have, so to find the unique element, we have created a function unique in duplicate, and we'll be calling it using the array name and the number of elements. So here the number of elements is 7, and it will print the unique. It will return the unique number and we'll print it using cout. So the main function is quite easy to understand. This is some commented code which I have explained again. So here the XOR value of duplicate numbers is 0. So when I do 5 XOR 5 or 2 XOR 2, the value is 0, and the XOR for 0 and the unique number will give me the unique number. So what I'll do is I'll just keep an XOR value, like a variable named XOR, and I'll go over the array. So like I'll iterate over the array, and at each array position I'll XOR the current value with that array position, or the array, not the array position, but the element at that position. So for example, let's say I start with 0, and the array is something like this. So 1, 2, 5, so, and 3. So, or let's say take it like 1, 1 and 3. Okay. So what will happen is that when we have idx equal to 0, according to this for loop, idx is 0, and our XOR value is also 0 due to this statement. So what will happen? 0 XOR 1 will happen. So the current value of XOR value would be 1. Then the for loop would iterate again. Then we would come to 3. Then 3 and 1 would be XORed, and the value would be stored in XOR value. For now, that let's not go into the calculation for that, because that would be an intermediate result. this is bit manipulation, so it's not going to happen like everything's going to be 0 and cancel out. It depends upon the order as well. So consider that we XOR 1 and 3, and then we store the result in XOR value. Now the next time when we try to do that value and XOR with 1, this one and this one will cancel out, and the value and then would remain 3. So actually I think I'll just write that down here. Okay, so the first value was 1 XOR with 0. The second would be then, and this would then result in the value 1. Then we would have 1, this one. Okay, so then okay, then let's do, then we would have 1 XORed with 3, and if I want to do 1 XOR 3, so it's like 0 0 1. So let me, okay, so that will give me 2. Okay, and then if I want to do it the third time, then it will be 2 XOR 1, because the third element in the array is 1, and when I do that, so the answer would be 3. So if we look at the output, so that the end output, the answer is 3, which is the unique element in the array. This intermediate result 2 is because of the XOR, and we don't like, if it is present there is no problem, because we are at the end looking at the result. So even if we have, let's say, 3 at the start or 3 is at the end, the XOR of all the values will always result in the unique value. So that's a quite interesting property of XOR. And let's say if I run this, okay, and again, like, it's running for this array, not the 131. That's just an example. So the answer comes out as 3 is unique. Now let's say that I replace this 5 with a 3. So now 5 becomes unique. So if I run this again, so now 5 is unique will become. So this is bit, so this is how the XOR property or the XOR operator can be used to find the unique values in duplicates. You can also find, let's say, if there are, let's say, 2 unique in a array of duplicates. So like here we have, if I remove the 3, now you can see 1 and 1 is 1 has a duplicate, 2 has a duplicate, but 5 and 3 don't have any duplicate. So we can even find those as well. That is quite an advanced, we can say, implementation. So we'll not be covering that right now, but if you want, you can search how to find 2 unique out of a array of duplicates. So okay, that's all from my side. I hope you found this topic interesting, and thank you.